All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show. George is off on assignment, flying to Chicago, I believe. So we wish him good travels. We'll see him next week. But no worries, Street Scores Rico is in the house. What's up, brother?
What's good, man? Happy to be here.
It's been a little while since we talked.
I think the audio went out. I'm not sure if it's on my end.
No, that was me.
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you now.
I gotta replace this mic. Technical difficulties, you gotta love them. I was saying before the mic went out that there has been, I mean, it's almost a brand new organization now. It
Oh yeah.
feels as close. I hate to say this because people get upset, but it feels as close to an expansion team as you get without having one that offends people. But that's kind of where we're at now. How have you felt since new ownership took over last year? They pretty much said they'd gotten here too late, weren't going to be able to do much. It would be this year when things really started to happen. I think we're seeing that. How do you feel so far in year two of what is essentially a full rebuild?
I'm loving it. I mean, everything is different. I mean, they came through with their promise. Josh Harris said that we were going to be very analytics based. He's brought in a lot of guys for that. He's brought in football people to do the football things. He's not micromanaging and overstepping his boundaries. He's giving money where it's supposed to be and letting the guys that know what they're doing do what they need to do. Because he has to be, I mean, with the front office and the coaching staff that we've put together, he has to be paying a lot of money. We haven't gotten any like official details on it, but to pull Dave Gardy from the NFL league office, and that's the job that most people, that's their ultimate goal. I want to work for Roger Goodell directly. He left that to come join us. So that has to be a mix of, first of all, believing in the vision of what we're building here, but also he has to be getting paid quite nicely as well. And then just the whole organization. I mean, we have the most roster turnover going from 2023 to 2024. I believe Rick Snyder said, I haven't gone to do the research myself, so I'm just quoting him, but he said this is the most roster turnover we've had within one off season since World War II, because the players left and had to come back and things like that. So this is, hey man, this is going to be an entirely new team, and I love how it's been like a step by step process of excitement. It was the Adam Pete Rivera gone, Adam Peters in, and then it was the then we started hiring the coaching staff. Then it was free agency. Then it was the draft, and then we keep hiring more and more scouts after the draft that are very reputable and things like that. So I'm loving it. This is the most fun off season I've had, and I'm an off season guy. So this is Christmas for me.
That's right. He's you make a great point, Rico. He's spending the money where where you can spend it. You know what I mean? The
Yep.
last guy didn't like to spend it, and we kind of understand that why now, because he was spending it in other places on himself. But this is how you win in the edges, as they say. You find the little spots. Just paying these guys, the front office staff they're putting together is a who's who of young and up and coming guys, which is exciting. The coaching staff. How do you feel about the coaching staff? Despite what they say, it felt like Dan Quinn was a pivot. Now that doesn't mean that you don't pivot in the right direction sometimes.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
feels like maybe they dodged a bullet there. I like Dan Quinn more and more all the time. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I'm definitely. I mean, even before we hired him, even when I was one of those people that wanted the young and up and coming offensive minded head coach, the thing was with Dan Quinn was relationships and his ability to put together the better staff. Like as much as we even like Mike McDonald over there from the Ravens, we were like, I mean, he's new to the NFL. Who does he have connections with? Who will he be able to bring over to his staff? We're seeing what Dan Quinn is able to do now. Granted, maybe he's had the help of some other people as well, but to basically steal Cliff Kingsbury from the Raiders when that deal was almost done, even though Antonio Pierce said that was because of Magic Johnson, but whatever. Like the coaching staff, I mean Anthony Lynn, being a head coach a few years ago to being the run game coordinator for a team that was just in the Super Bowl, to leave to do that exact thing, not even to take a promotion, to do that exact thing coming here with a supposed rebuild. I mean, there has to be. I mean, granted, some of it's probably Adam Peters, some of it is probably Josh Harris paying them very well. But I mean, there has to be some sort of belief in the head coach. If we were able to get all of these former head coaches, we have former defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators taking smaller roles here as well. Like people are taking basically demotions to come be a part of this franchise. And Dan Quinn has to be a part of that. If your head coach is bad, it doesn't matter how great of a GM Adam Peters is or anybody else is. I don't think people follow suit the way that they have.
It doesn't even feel like reality, Rico. If this is our organization, the team that we root for the most, because nobody was signing up, nobody was taking the money to come here
Yeah.
unless
Yep.
the bag was big. And now, to your point, you brought up Anthony Lynn. I think he may be the most important hire of the group. I like Cliff Kingsbury going back to just doing what he does well, which is designing plays and calling plays and in the lab working on things. But as we studied it, on Tuesdays during the season, we were looking at the tape, and the one thing that Cliff doesn't do well or didn't do well in Arizona was marry up the play action game. They made no sense, so nobody was buying it. The one thing we know Anthony Lynn's going to do well for sure coming out of that Kyle Shanahan system is get that play action game going right. I'm actually excited about the backfield. I think they're going to run the ball quite a bit. People forget in Arizona with Cliff. I mean, you had James Conner out there who had one of the biggest seasons of his career. I'm kind of excited about a team that's actually going to play defense and run the ball. It's not how the league generally works now. Can it be done that way? Do you think that's what they plan on doing?
Yeah, I mean, because just first of all, to your point, Anthony Lynn, being a former head coach and things like that, he's gonna have like a commanding voice. Like he's going to have an opinion. I'm pretty sure before he even agreed to come here, like it had to be established. Yeah, Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator, but we're gonna run this ball. And even just to go off a little bit, Anthony Lynn. Now, another way he'll help is because maybe we question the Bobby Johnson hire, offensive line, a little bit. Him coming from the Giants and their offensive line wasn't good. Anthony Lynn will help with a lot of that as well. So he's going to be kind of helping all over the place with the run game. But yeah, I think we will run the ball. I feel like we have too much talent. First of all, Jaden Daniels' legs, that's an extension of the run game as well. And then Brian Robinson, you bring over Austin Eckler. And everybody we brought over this offseason was a pass catching back. But I still think they're going to run the ball as a lot. I think Brian Robinson, hopefully they watched the tape last year. He was very underutilized. Like when we're talking about efficiency stats, like per run, per catch, per snap and things like that. He was like top 8 in like several different statistical categories among running backs last year. So his whole thing is just give him the ball more. Remember, players last year were complaining about the fact that we didn't run the ball as much, especially the offensive line. That's a big part. Offensive lines are in a more in advantage when they're running the ball more than they're passing the ball. They're going forward rather than backwards. Samuel Cosme even complained about that out loud. So I think running the ball is going to make everybody better.
Is the O line? I mean, you talk to people, and that seems to be like the biggest concern this season going into it is the offensive line. I was watching an interview with Chris Forrester, who we remember from the Mike Shanahan days. He's out with Kyle now as the offensive line coach there. And he was talking about how you just need like an average line. There's a click above average that you like to be at, and there's a click below average where you just to back up, and we don't, and that's okay, but we can't help you as a starter. And basically, what he was saying is, put your money where the playmakers are, and we can figure out ways to kind of help with the offensive line, shifting guys, doubling the best pass rusher they have. Is the offensive line really the concern that some fan thinks it is in your mind?
It's a weird middle because I'm very optimistic about Brandon Coleman potentially starting at left tackle, but who knows if he's ready by week 1. But at the same time, like left tackle, second overall pick, supposed franchise quarterback's blind spot. That's big time, especially with him being a rookie. But I love the fact that we went out there and got a lot of veterans, especially specifically center with Tyler Biadasz. He's going to be a huge help for the maturation and development of Jaden Daniels there at being a rookie. So I don't think it's as big of a problem as people think. I mean, even to your point about the fact that as long as the offensive line is just above average, we're great. We don't need like the best offensive line in the NFL. They just need to hold up long enough, especially with Jaden Daniels having the legs that he has, but not only the legs that he has, but also the ability to get the ball out of his hands pretty quickly as well. So individually, maybe it's a worry, but I think as a whole, it's not as big of a worry as people think, again, because we can work around it schematically as well.
Is Cornelius Lucas at left tackle?
Yeah, I hope not. I mean, I like him, but I just refuse to believe that Adam Peters and this new regime is higher on Cornelius Lucas than Rivera and those guys were. They felt like he was a backup. They went and got Charles Leno even with Cornelius Lucas. So I refuse to believe that Rivera and those guys are higher on Cornelius Lucas than Adam Peters and those guys are. So I think they're just kind of waiting to see if Brandon Coleman is ready or not, or if anybody else on the roster is ready or not. And then if they're not, maybe they go sign a veteran tackle, maybe like a David Bakhtiari to a very heavily incentivized
Mhm.
deal to where it's like super pay per game that you're available. But I think that's the only thing they're waiting on. I don't think they feel like Cornelius Lucas is a starting left tackle, or maybe they feel like he can do it just for a little bit until Brandon Coleman's ready.
You brought up Charles Leno. It was this time of year, that they got Charles Leno. So you know how this works
Yep.
once it gets started. Guys will get let go that you didn't think were going to get let go, and you have a chance because I don't think Brandon Coleman's going to be ready for this year. I don't think the guy they drafted in the fourth round last year is anywhere close to
Oh
being
yeah,
ready to
no.
go.
Brandon
Uh,
Daniels.
yes, right. I was going to say James Daniels. I knew that one right. Did you have a preference at the second pick?
Yeah, I mean, I was leaning towards Jaden Daniels. I would have been happy either way. More so just because I trust this coaching staff to whoever they preferred. I feel like they put in the time, the hours, the millions of dollars. I mean, for me, we couldn't be this excited about getting Adam Peters and this elite coaching staff, especially this quarterback development coaching staff, where we have like several proven quarterback developers. If we can't give them the benefit of the doubt of the guy that they chose, so even though I prefer Jaden Daniels, I would have been happy really either way, especially with like a Drake May, or you can even maybe persuade me into liking JJ McCarthy if they would have taken him. I can see the glass half full in any situation, but my preference was definitely Jaden Daniels with how ready he would be for immediately week one. I felt like what we did in free agency was signing so many veterans. They may not necessarily feel like we're like Super Bowl contenders just yet, but they want to compete. I feel like if they didn't do what they did in free agency, maybe they would have leaned towards Drake May, maybe go for the long term, higher ceiling guy. But I feel like, first of all, Jaden Daniels' ceiling, I feel like it's not talked about enough with him having the best deep ball, with him having the great legs that he can use. I feel like his ceiling, even though Drake May does have a ridiculously high ceiling, I feel like Jaden Daniels' ceiling was being undervalued a little bit just as we were comparing him to Drake May over and over again.
Yeah, his legs give him the upper hand, and in at least being able to get ready to go right now. I'm buying him up in all of my fantasy leagues because
Yes.
he's got an opportunity to put up.
Peyton Manning said the same thing too. Peyton Manning said he loves Jaden Daniels for his fantasy football league as well too.
Well, yeah, because you get the running, you
Yes,
get the running.
sir.
So if Jaden Daniels gets anywhere close to 500 on the ground, which I don't think is, I mean, there's no reason to think that he can't get there. Um, Yeah, big time fantasy points, which I'm excited about. And they the weapons that he has. I mean, if Jahan Dotson can look anything like he did 2 years ago, then they start to have some weapons there. I'm excited about the tight end Senate that they drafted. How did you feel about the draft overall? I mean, they kind of knocked those first four rounds out of the park.
Yeah, I loved it. I think best player available is the way to go. You use free agency to fill as many holes as you can, and then you use the draft to get the best guys that are there. I mean, granted, now we can agree or disagree about who we feel like are the best guys available, but you could tell that based on what their board was, they didn't necessarily ignore positions, but they did say, okay, this is like, why is this guy here right now? We
That's
got
right.
to take him. That's how they felt about a lot of their picks in those first two rounds. Like you said, Ben Sinnott, I mean, how versatile he is, very underrated. I mean, basically like a more athletic Chris Cooley. So I'm very excited about how they're going to utilize him. And the fact that we have Zach Ertz here to take him under his wing. Mike Sanders still, a lot of people feel like that was one of the best picks in the entire draft. I mean, Nick Saban said best pound for pound player. The Chris Sims said wouldn't be surprised if he's the best slot corner in the entire NFL within 2 years. Joe Klatt loves him. Felt like he was the best player on the best defense in all of college football. I can't wait for him to go out there. And I know a lot of people are like, well, he's just a slot corner, but depending on how you run your defense, the slot corner can be out there for like 70% of snaps. And
Yeah,
I think
right.
he plays bigger than what he is. So I'm very excited about him. And then Johnny Newton, once he's healthy, I mean, the upside there, being able to give Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne a breather every now and then. They were playing way too often last year out of necessity.
86% of the snaps they played.
That's
86.
ridiculous. That
Incredible.
that's why their stats, regressed a little bit because you're not as fresh, you're not as
Uh,
explosive as you used to be. So now they'll be more efficient, they'll be more explosive on a per snap basis. So I think that's gonna make everybody better, just including them in that group right there.
Is it weird to hear that Dante Fowler is on the Commanders?
Very weird. I mean, he's just been everywhere. But glass half full, he had his best
Productive.
statistical season last year with the Dallas Cowboys. So we'll see what he could do on a pass rush side. I mean, I don't feel like we have like any true dominant certified edge rushers, but we do have the defensive coaching staff that's very creative as far as like dialing up pressure, manufacturing pressure schematically rather than just like the individual themselves. So I'm very optimistic about our ability to get after the quarterback just because our coaching is just far improved from the previous season.
I agree, and I think the league is moving. We talked about this a little bit on the show recently to more interior pass rush pressure. Yeah, the quarterbacks get the ball out of their hands so quickly now in under 3 seconds that the edge pressure, if the corners can just hold, it's tough for them to get there. So rushing up the middle, fastest way to get there is a straight line. I like the idea that the team is kind of building their pass rush through the middle with with their two best players, really. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited also about the idea of maybe Jamin Davis being used more in that pass rush package, which he probably should have always been doing.
Yeah, honestly, and to add to your point, great point about the pass rush up the middle. They even brought over a linebacker and Frankie Louvu,
That's
who's
right.
like an ace at getting pressure up the A gap, like timing it. Even like blowing up offensive linemen at times. He plays bigger than his size as well. And then yeah, back to Jamin Davis. Yeah, to your point, he definitely should have been doing this a long time ago. At least we should have been experimenting with it a
That's right.
long time ago. He's shown improvement in the run game. He's shown flashes in coverage, but ultimately with that elite athleticism, we should have had him doing that a long time ago. And I'm happy to hear that guys like John Kama saying that so far in practices, he's not polished yet. He's not consistent yet. Of course, this is new to him. But when they're doing certain drills, like he stands out when it comes to like agility and bend and athleticism compared to other guys who have been playing edge rusher for years. So the ceiling is there. There's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some growing pains, but I think he'll ultimately turn into a really good, the versatile chess piece that rush the passer now, go cover a running back out of the backfield, this play and things like that. And, granted, we didn't pick up his fifth year option, and I think that's going to motivate him even more to go out there and be as good as he possibly can this season as well.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's saying he's Micah Parsons, right? But I can see him
Exactly.
in that kind of sub package role when they've got Parsons rushing the passer. I think that's where he probably lives best.
And we
We
have the guy that did it, and Dan Quinn and Joe Woods
that's,
Jr.
that's,
They're the ones that designed that.
that's right. They brought in a bunch of interesting names in the offseason. You mentioned Luvu, another one that I think is interesting that I forget all the time. Jeremy Chin's on the team. You know what's crazy?
Yeah.
Jeremy Chin is 26 years old. We had Jim Nagy on the show the other day from the Senior Bowl, and he was talking to us about Jeremy Chin, and he said, what happened in Carolina? I don't know, but that's not Jeremy Chin. He said, I think you're going to see Jeremy Chin from 3 years ago when he was all over the field and I believe was the runner up for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
excited about him, 6'3, 220. How they'll use him, they've got him listed as a linebacker.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting. I'm very high on Jeremy Chin. I wanted us to draft him so bad. The draft he was coming out. Then he was defensive player, rookie of the year, runner up with Chase Young and things like that. I I blame it on coaching more than anything else. I feel like their new defensive coordinator didn't really value the star position, or what some people refer to it as like the Buffalo nickel, and he just kind of left Jeremy Chin out there on the island, kind of like, you figure it out. You make yourself useful rather than him coaching it up himself. You saw the flashes, to your point, his rookie season, where, like, man, if you just put this guy in the right spots, he can be electric. He can be disruptive. I mean, I love his elite athleticism. It's crazy because they have him listed as a linebacker, and I think with the build that he has, Frankie Louvu's going to rush the pass. He's going to cover every now and then, but he's also going to stop the run. Bobby Wagner's going to stop the run, be the quarterback of the defense, occasionally cover as well. Jamin Davis is going to be coming off of the edge. If you treat Jeremy Chin like a linebacker, along with Jordan McGee, who I'm very high on, who we just
I
drafted,
am
I
too.
feel like that covers the coverage part of the linebacker group as well. But then I've also heard somewhere in practice that they had Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin as your starting safeties at one point in practice. They're doing like heavy rotations. They're experimenting, but it sounds like he may have been like the strong safety, Quan Martin, the free safety. So I mean, that just goes to your point of how versatile this guy is. That just have him on the field. Use him however you feel like using him, but let him play and let him just be a freak athlete. And he's shown flashes of using instincts as well. And I think he'll be a deadly part of our defense, man. I think that's going to be the guy that most people kind of forget that we have, and is going to go out there and start making plays.
I saw a picture from camp the other day that had Ken Norton Jr. coaching up Bobby Wagner, and I was trying to figure out what planet I was living on. To see those two guys in the burgundy and gold was crazy.
Yeah.
That Bobby Wagner, it's interesting. Bobby Wagner's the same age that London Fletcher was when he got here. So again, if this
Ah.
notion that like Bobby's here for a year or two, yeah, he's got to win your contract, and a lot of these guys do these prove it deals. But there's no reason to think that if he's healthy and motivated, he can't be here for 3-4 years. I'll tell you what the interesting thing is. They have finally put some effort into the linebacker position, which we haven't seen here in a while, which is crazy because they were all linebackers as coaches.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, even to your point about Bobby Wagner, I think last year he had his most tackles in a season. So,
Yeah,
of course, you don't necessarily want him doing that all the time, but he's showing that he still has it. He may be like a half a step slower in coverage, but he's so instinctual. I mean, we all remember Sean Lee from the Cowboys. I mean, I believe both of us were faster than him, but he was so instinctual. He knew it was going to happen before it happened, and he still made plays in coverage because of that. That's what Bobby Wagner's going to bring here. And I just love the fact that we have certain guys taking other guys under their wing, like Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu are there to show Jamin Davis and Jordan McGee what to do. You have Zach Ertz for Ben Sinnott. You have Terry McLaurin. You see Luke McCaffrey and Terry McLaurin spending a lot of extra time around each other. I love the mentorship program that we have going on with the team right now. But it's not guys like our Georgia Bulldog Thomas Davis, where he's purely on the field coach and that's it.
that's right.
Bobby Wagner, Terry McLaurin, and Zach Ertz can play as well, and they're going to contribute on Sundays.
Jim Nagy said the comp from McGee was JOK for the Bears now. That he sees a lot of that from the same time when JOK came out of Notre Dame. A lot of people high on McGee.
Yeah, I can see the JOK a little bit. I can see some Dre Greenlaw, who Adam Peters drafted himself to the 49ers. I see a lot of that in this game. He's coming with immediate coverage upside. He's coming with better instincts than Jamin Davis came out with out of college. It's not perfect yet, but there's something to build on there. And I truly believe having Bobby Wagner, and then to your point, Ken Norton Jr. as our linebackers coach is phenomenal. I mean, that's probably one of our most underrated hires out of this entire offseason of great hires that we've done. So I'm expecting him to develop quicker and be ready to play sooner than what, like, if he would have went to another team, he would have been. I feel like this is a great environment for him to develop and mature as soon as possible. So I'm very excited about him. I feel like that's kind of, even though Jamin Davis is moving more to like an edge rusher role, I feel like they're not as attached to forcing it. We got to keep Jamin Davis because now you do have Jordan McGee, another freak athlete as well, just like Jamin Davis.
The two of them are kind of similar in that way. Freak athletes that need to get coached up. The problem is the problem for Davis, they just never coached him up right. And I
Never.
don't know if they just didn't have a plan for him or what the deal was there, because I mean, you could see the potential. I just don't think they had a proper plan for him. It'll be interesting to see what these guys do with him. Rico, I think one of the other big storylines that we'll see in camp is how that secondary, we talked about just a little bit, that secondary and how it'll kind of sort out. Louis T was on the show a couple of weeks ago, was telling me about how good Mike Davis was 2 years ago with the Chargers. I'm excited. I'm interested to see how this thing shakes out. If you figure that you'll have three cornerbacks on the field 60% of the time with the two safeties, as of now, way too early to know, but what do you think the secondary ends up looking like? What do you
I
hope it
think
ends up looking like?
I think you can't keep Mike Sanders still off the field. I think he's
Yeah.
going to be out there as often as possible. So that's already one spot taken. Now you're thinking about the other two. To your point and Louis T's point, like Mike Davis 2 years ago, same thing with Benjamin St. Juste. If we can get 2022 version of both of those guys, we're pretty set at corner. Maybe not necessarily long term, but we can, we'll be pretty good this year. I'm thinking that's what they'll probably go with, the two better cover corners, because Emmanuel Forbes, I feel like this defensive coaching staff, if any, can get the best out of him. I feel like, with the way that they had Deron Bland used last year after Trevon Diggs
Mhm.
got hurt, and even speaking of Trevon Diggs, they Emmanuel Forbes can be the interception hunting guy like that, while Michael Davis and Benjamin St. Juste are more of like the Stephon Gilmore to actually cover the receivers for an extended period of time while we wait to get to the quarterback and things like that. So I feel like we have utility, like in certain ways. You maybe use Emmanuel Forbes in certain packages, or who knows, maybe he improves this offseason and ends up becoming a starter. But I feel like we have a decent, solid base with those two corners. Maybe not necessarily long term, because I believe both of their contracts end after this season. So that's going to be an interesting scenario right there. But I think we'll be pretty solid. I think I have Mike Sanders still automatically on the field as often as possible. As of today, I think it's Mike Davis and Benjamin St. Juste. We'll see what Emmanuel Forbes looks like by the time we get to the regular season. And then safety wise, I think it's hard to keep Quan Martin off the field because he
Yep.
showed you flashes last year. I was thinking more Martin strong safety, Jeremy Chin, your Buffalo nickel hybrid safety linebacker, and then we have competition at free safety. But again, it's going to be hard to keep Quan off the field. It's going to be hard to keep Jeremy Chin off the field. Maybe just throw them out there together. I don't know. I think we have so much talent in the safety group that I feel like it's going to be a really fun camp battle there to see. It's going to be hard to even Derek Forrest, the flashes he showed a couple of years ago.
And Butler looked like he was coming on towards the end of last year when he was getting more playing time.
Exactly.
Real fast guy. I think that will be interesting to see what they do there. What is your biggest concern going into the season?
With of course, trying to figure out what we're gonna do at left tackle is a big one, but I feel like underrated is the receiver position depth wise. Love Terry McLaurin, love Jahan, love Luke McCaffrey, and De'Ami Brown's arguably our best blocking wide receiver. Jameis Crowder's a veteran in the slot and things like that, but. I mean, the way I'm looking at it, if we had like one injury, say like Jahan Dotson has to miss a game or two, like he has done, and we're going out there with Terry McLaurin and Luke McCaffrey as your top two receivers, and then it's like a fairly steep drop off after that. I'm worried about that, and I would love to also get some size in the receiver group right now, because right now rookie wide receiver Luke McCaffrey is our tallest receiver at 6'2" outside of Bryson Tremaine, who's more than likely going to end up on the practice squad. So I feel like the receiver group is has a. I don't think it's like a dire panic need. I feel like again through free agency we filled up so many holes that I don't have any position group that I'm just absolutely worried about. Completely just lost as to how we're going to work around it schematically, or whatever veteran free agent we can maybe grab out there, or a young guy could potentially develop into a starting role. But I feel like left tackle in the receiver position, and maybe you can argue outside corner with your first round pick from last year, Emmanuel Forbes, not looking as great as you hoped at this point.
They picked up Rosemary Jack Saint. Were you excited about that dude?
Yeah.
Not just the homer that we both are, but he could play. I don't think people realize like that dude's got hands. He didn't run fast. He shouldn't have ran down in Athens. That was his problem.
Yeah.
It's a slow track down there. You know that. I don't know why any of those guys would ever run down there on that track. But I think he's got a real chance to make the 53.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not sure if you saw, but the Draft Network said that we had arguably the best undrafted free agency class out of the entire NFL, and they pointed out as Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint as the guy that has the best chance at making the roster. And it's like a mix of his talent and also what I speak to as far as like the wide receiver depth we have going on right now. But to your point, his hands are great. I mean, everybody saw that catch he made in rookie minicamps day one, and then you saw Dan Quinn kind of staying around him and talking to him a lot. So Dan Quinn's taking a liking to him. Sadly, he did suffer that hamstring, injury
Mm.
tightness. Nothing major. I mean,
Yeah,
he should be back by hopefully mandatory mini camps. At worst, the beginning of training camps. I think he'll jump right back and get his momentum going again. But I love his talent. He may not be the biggest athlete, the fastest guy, the most elite traits or anyway, but he's Mr. Dependable. You need a play 3rd and 5. You need somebody to make a catch and get
always.
open. That's your guy.
And and never dropped him. I don't
Never.
recall him ever dropping a pass to George. Obviously, I'm sure he did, but they damn sure weren't in big moments. I know that because that
Yes, sir.
always making plays. Let's switch gears. How are our Bulldogs going to do this year?
I mean, the fact that we're motivated, because the main
Yes,
problem last year was keeping them
I
motivated.
think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, because we had a lot of close games with teams that we shouldn't have. You could tell they just went in a little lethargic. We're, when in doubt in the second half, we'll turn it up and we'll end up winning the game. And that showed a lot last year. Now that we finally have a reason to be motivated, we did not win a championship the year before. I think they're gonna come through more motivated than ever. And then on top of that, I feel like this rookie class is going to have a lot of impactful players, maybe not even necessarily starters, but I feel like this freshman class is very hungry as well. And I'm expecting some big leaps out of second year players like Jordan Hall in the defensive line. I feel like he's our closest thing to having like a dominant defensive lineman, like a Jalen Carter type of guy, which we were really missing last year. I love Nazir Stackhouse and all of those guys,
Right.
but they're okay. But I think Kristen Miller, the guy we brought through the transfer portal, I can't remember his name right now. I think from like Mississippi State somewhere. And then Jordan Hall with his second year leap, I think we're finally gonna have that true dominant. And then Michael Williams moving to like more of like a jack position.
Yes.
I think we're gonna finally get pressure on the quarterback, and I feel like that was our biggest Achilles heel last year,
It was
especially against
missing last
Alabama.
year. Yep.
Yep.
You're right. It was weird to see them not get much of a pass rush last year. The other thing, of course, is Carson Beck, to me, the best quarterback in
Yeah.
the country. I think he's
Agreed.
gone really high this year. If he'd come out next year with another year under his belt, I'm super excited to see what he's about. I don't think people realize how good Carson is.
Oh yeah, I guess because he's not as fast as Stetson Bennett or even like a Jalen Milroe right now. He's maybe not as flashy, but the talent, he's first overall pick written all over him. And then to your point, second year in Mike Bobo's system is going to do him wonders. I mean, he's going to be more confident. You could tell last year he was a little bit more passive. He was more so just take the open guy underneath. I think he is going to, take a few more deep shots this last year and really take advantage of the receiving core that we put around. I mean, this receiving core is loaded. And I'm hearing that even Arian Smith is now becoming consistent, and that's dangerous because
That
he's the
would be
fastest
nice.
player on the field. So, I mean, if he can start to actually track the ball well down the field and make those catches, I mean, I honestly have no idea how you deal with this offense. I mean, especially bringing over Trevor Etienne and
And
all
the
of the
tight
running backs
ends.
that we have. That too. I can't. But Yurisek from Stanford he's going to catch a lot of people by surprise.
It's been amazing to kind of see the transformation at Georgia from like a defense first, run heavy team to this offense that you gotta score 40 to
Exactly.
with Georgia now, and it's wild to see it. It's exciting. I saw the pictures from over the weekend from the Jazz Fest down in Atlanta. That thing looked crazy.
Oh yeah, I heard about it. I wasn't able to make it, but I did hear about it.
All right, let's wrap up like this, Rico. What is the game plan for the Commanders? What makes for a good season for them?
I think a big step of improvement. I think if we become the team that everybody hates to play, like by the time we get to like November and December, and people are like, man, they
Testing.
found their step. Even if we don't make the playoffs, but we show like, oh man, I do not want to play those guys. And we teams are hoping that we don't make the playoffs because we have that hot momentum going into it. That's like my ultimate realistic goal. Of course, like best case scenario, we make the playoffs. We do what the Texans did, win the division and things like that. But I feel like our best realistic goal is to end the season hot. We may start off a little ugly, but we get a lot of our worst travel out the way early too. So even schedule wise, we should end fairly hot as well. A lot of our last games are NFC East rivals. If we can win some of those games, again, take into the offseason with a lot of momentum to show that we've truly improved from being a 4-win team, I think that would be great for me. Win like 7-8 games and go into this offseason very optimistic about the future.
I was going to ask. That's how I was going to say the over under right now is at 6.5 win total. You taking the over or the under on 6.5?
Oh yeah, I'm for sure taking the over. Now, some of it is schedule based, but I also just believe we have the talent. I mean, they showed in the free agency with all of the guys that we brought in. They want to compete now. Maybe not necessarily for a Super Bowl, but they want to win now. We're not just going out there with a second overall pick quarterback and the primary focus and the only focus is for him to develop. That's it. No, they actually want to win games at the same time as they've shown. And I think we won 4 games last year with as terrible as we were last year. I think you can give us at least 3 more wins from how much we've improved this offseason compared to last year.
I agree. Rico, always good to catch up with you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir, man. Thanks as always, man. Let me know.
All right.